Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Tavush for the Motherland was launched in response to the launch of the delimitation and demarcation process undertaken by the government. So this was deemed groundless, and this was considered to be a compromise that is unilateral, and this is what served as the ground for the launch of Tavush for Motherland movement, and its first meeting takes place in Ijevan and on April 19, when the population of Kiranz-Paranis and Voskebach block the way. The movement comes into this area, and the population of the three villages started. On May 24th, they start marching towards Yerevan. On May 29th, they start the large demonstration in Armenia, and Mr. Galstanyan selects the strategy for the remaining meetings. And the meetings resonated very well, and the movement started its peaceful disobedience actions. And there were gatherings in front of various ministries, and clear public demands were put forth to the agencies. Today, Bagrat Archbishop Galstanyan, who is the leader of the movement, stands ready to answer the questions of international media outlet journalists. The meeting will be held on Zoom, online, and we have over 40 media outlets registered, and we're planning to work for about 2 hours. And I would request to establish some ground rules, which we'll try to adhere to. Every media outlet will be given the opportunity of one question and one remark, and we'll try to not to exceed 5 minutes. According to our preliminary agreement, the media outlets were supposed to send in the questions preliminarily, and the priority will be given to the media outlet that has sent in the questions ahead of time. And then we'll give time and opportunity to the other media outlets. If there will be any questions that would remain unaddressed, the Archbishop will respond to them in writing. I am Eric Antaranyan. But God be unto us, Reverend Father, God be unto us. Let's start. And we have Narek Galstanyan online. God be unto us, Reverend Father. Hello, Eric. Hello, Narek. Narek Galstanyan from the Russian TASS news agency. My question is as follows. In any case, if the movement is victorious, and it so happens that you shape up a government, which is often mentioned, there will be external challenges and issues which would be impossible to avert. The Armenian society is not living its best times under the current regime. You know that Armenia has frozen its participation in the Collective Security Treaty Organization. I would like to hear your vision on the relations between Armenia and Russia, CSTO, the CIS, Eurasian Economic Union, and other integration platforms. Thank you. This is a very important question, and I'm very thankful to you for that. You know, the Republic of Armenia has treaty-based legal relations with the Russian Federation, and it has a new level of regulations, and the relations are established, and medically speaking, we're not in a good state and condition in this regard, if I do not say that these relations are mostly drastic at the moment. And our understanding is that even though we have a multitude of questions to be posed to the Russian party, we will need to try and bring these relations onto the level of our treaty-based relations, and hereby to move everything onto the natural course of things.
In a constructive sense, this needs to be normalized. This relationship needs to be normalized and put into a constructive dialogue spirit. Obviously, as I said, at this stage, this relationship does not exist. one can say. And for us, the contractual legal obligations are applicable. We have lots of questions, and we need to be ready to address all these questions on the level of mutual understanding of dialogue. Narek, write a response. I want to hear Eminent Fathers. This is one of the irritating questions in the Armenian-Russian relationship. Armenia froze its membership in the CSTO, and if that's what happens, what will be your position on CSTO? I already spoke about this, and I said what our principles will be for all relationships, in particular in the Armenian-Russian relationship. The core of our agenda is the Armenian agenda, the interests of the Republic of Armenia. And all relationships, no matter which, should be built around that nexus. At the moment, we're thinking that all the conditions that have been defined in the legal framework, in the legal treaty framework, need to be discussed, and those include the questions that you asked, the topics that you brought up, and we have to stick to this domain. It requires a broad-based, a multi-layered discussion and dialogue. Questions need to be raised, but all of this should happen in a constructive spirit. I reiterate, based on mutual understanding, without undermining the Armenian agenda in the interests of the Republic of Armenia. Thank you. Allow me to remind you, if you wish to hear for English, please press the corresponding button, and we continue. Press Mariam, please. Good afternoon. I have a problem with my video, but do you hear me? Yes, we hear you all. It's all fine. Good afternoon, Eminent Father. Here is my question. How do you intend to achieve a change in government if we see the broad masses are not flooding the streets? Street pressure will not secure such a victory, or it seems very hard. And what changes would you make if change of government succeeded? What would you change around the negotiation table with Azerbaijan? What would you change in these negotiations? Thank you. Thank you, Mariam. Firstly, I do not really agree with you that people or the masses are not flooding the streets. There is wide support, very wide support for this movement. There's the visible part and the invisible part of it. Of course, our actions are aimed at eventually generating the wide masses and securing more people and having it more significant. But as to the negotiations, there are currently no negotiations right now. There's the force, the imposition of force. And that's what the recent events indicate. This demarcation or delineation process took place in all senses, in all respects, with violations, legal violations, logical violations, ethical, moral violations. Now we see that the Azerbaijani government is using the language of force and imposition. The last example is that there will be no peace unless the constitution is amended. Our problem is that in these non-existing negotiations, that we should engage in real, genuine negotiations. I disagree that negotiations actually agree. There are no negotiations. The main thing is we are ready, we should be ready, and the negotiation should really become comprehensive and multilateral. Thank you, Mariam. I have no reaction to that. Thank you. The next one is the Erasmus comeback. Erasmus comeback, independent journalist, Journalist, go ahead, please.
I wonder if you can see me. Right now. Oh, yeah, I can see myself. Yes, thank you so much for this. And I would like to ask you, in the event of gaining the leadership of Armenia, what changes will be made in the demarcation process, and how will the negotiation format with Azerbaijan change? And this is also given that the OSCE has shown support for the demarcation process right now.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. As I just said a little while ago, the real demarcation and delineation process does not exist. What's really happening today is a one-sided imposition, a policy of conceding with the threat of force. And it's our goal is to change the whole logic, and to engage in genuine negotiations and real negotiations. Countries welcome policies of countries, meaning of the countries that are currently in a conflict. And the OSCE's presence is very important, extremely important as a guarantor in these negotiations. Whether there's direct talk or not, and this direct talk is happening with the imposition of one side, which is in this case the government of Azerbaijan. Our whole idea for radical change is to have real negotiations in accordance with the international standards, with the involvement of guarantors. The OSCE is a very important platform. It could become a key guarantor of these negotiations. That's what I'm trying to say. And today, as such, the delineation and border demarcation do not exist. What exists is one-sided concession. What exists is the threat of force and imposition. Thank you. Rasmus, did you have anything to add?
Yes.
Oh yeah, and let me
Yes.
add one thing.
To continue,
Just a second.
if possible.
Okay. Yes.
Could you wait?
Okay. Yes, please. So when we're talking about
Wait, please. The speaker is not on. Wait, please. I just wanted to add to that with these one-sided concessions, with these impositions and threats and this type of relationship, peace cannot exist. There can be no peace. If we want peace, that peace should primarily be defined, and that peace should be defined firstly, that we should define what peace is. I mean, if they want to sign a peace treaty, that's what they should define first of all, before the other steps, before deciding what that treaty text should include. You cannot have delineation, delimitation, and demarcation that currently actually does not exist, and then suddenly decide how you can have peace afterwards without guarantors. That's just beyond, that defeats any logic. It's beyond any logic. Rasmus.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question. So Azerbaijan has said that they want Armenia to give up the idea of the Minsk group in the OSCE. Is this something that you want to go back to, the Minsk group, when it comes to this, or what would be the role of the OSCE?
Thank you. As I said a few times already, without guarantors, the presence of the existing OSCE Minsk group is crucial. The international guarantors of the existing platform they would prescribe this, and they would also, the negotiations would be more transparent and more credible. There would be nothing imposed, no threats, no one-sided concessions imposed, which is what's currently happening, which is why perhaps Azerbaijan wants to eliminate the mission of those guarantors or these intermediaries, to eliminate them altogether and to walk down the path that they're currently walking down without negotiations. I repeat, this is a very crucial thing, that the imitation, the illusion is that there are negotiations, but in reality there aren't negotiations, they do not exist. And the world has developed a system, the world has developed these possibilities, which the OSCE which is currently the OSCE Minsk group. Thank you. May we move to the next question, Sylvia Boltuk, Special Eurasia, please. Sylvia, it's over to you. Do you hear us, Sylvia? Okay, then we move on. Sylvia Boltuk, do you hear us? Go ahead, please. Well, the question was pre-sent, Your Eminence.
Should Archbishop Galstanyan assume his position? How might the policies towards Azerbaijan change? Եվս երկու հարց կա, բայց այս հարցից հետո։
Ուրեմն արդեն պատասխանեցի ես այդ հարցին։ Քաղաքականությունը
I already answered that question. The politics and the policy that is being pursued at the moment does not exist at the level of negotiations. And our desire and our program is to ensure that they come back to real negotiations and to the table of negotiations. Currently, Armenia has nothing to say in these relations. Not at all. There is no mutual compromise mood, no grounds for the recognition bilaterally the territorial sovereignty of each other. There are no grounds of the kind. There is imperative, there is dictation, there is threat of force. And this cannot be the ground and the basis for peace from generation to generation.
Distancing Armenia from Russia in favor of aligning with Western alliance and pursuing EU membership, or does he view these decisions as erroneous?
I do not think that this government has a problem or has the task of shifting the vector, but rather whatever we see is spontaneous, is situation-based, and our aim and our plan is to have long-lasting, sustainable, stable, positive, and constructive relations in all directions with all partners. There is a very important key detail here. Everything should be driven to the Armenian agenda. Everything should be contributing to the interests of Armenia and the Armenian people, and we cannot rule out the diaspora here. In all the countries of the world, we have compatriots whose presence is already indicative of the fact that unwillingly even, all these states all over the world are the friends of Armenia. And unlike the incumbent government of Armenia, whose policy pursued with the world is is incomprehensible, our task is going to focus on the interest of the Republic of Armenia, the Armenian agenda, to have long-term, stable, comprehensible relations and positive relations based on mutual understanding that are not chaotic, that are not spontaneous, that are not situation-driven, with all the partners all over the world. Thank you. And we already had 2 questions from Sylvia, but we still have time. Let us move forward. And then we have Seda Mavyan joining us. The floor is yours. Seda, can you hear us?
Les nouvelles d'Arménie պարբերականից Seda լսում եք մեզ?
Les nouvelles d'Arménie. Seda, can you hear us?
Sedan երևի թե մեզ լսում է, այնուամենայնիվ
Seda
հարցը հետևյալն է.
can perhaps hear us still. The question is as follows.
In the sinister zone, աղետի գոտի նկատին during the week, and what is your appreciation about the government's action in the sinister zone, աղետի գոտի?
Շատ լավ։ Աղետի գոտու համար մենք նախաձեռնել ենք տարբեր ծրագրեր, որոնք
Okay.
իրականացրել ենք նաև
So we have undertaken a number of initiatives that we implemented also via charitable organizations, and we made an announcement about one of those, which is the Arugyan Foundation, even though we did not want to speak about that. Secondly, in relation to the activities and actions of the government, we first of all need to understand why this disaster happened. And in this regard, we may come up with a multitude of assumptions, and the first one is related to the lack of competence of the government, that they were unable to undertake preventive measures so that the disaster was not that drastic. This is a very important issue. As to what they are implementing, these actions are not quite visible, but the task here is not to address the consequences, but rather to be proactive and preventive. Thank God now science is well developed at the moment and everything is measurable now. Reverend Father, it seems that Lori Marspetaran has shared some announcement that they're going to let out some water from the reservoir, and it's possible that there is flooding. We saw that announcement, but as in all the cases, this government is approaching everything as a matter of fact. And this is the mere expression of seeing that in the possible prevention, this didn't necessarily have to go up to that scale. Maybe this could happen, but this wouldn't go up to that scale. This is a fundamental issue. This is a fundamental issue of the understanding of the government, of competence, of capability, of administrative governance, that issues need to be foreseen and prevented rather than following the logic of addressing the consequences. I'm trying to read out Artur Avakov's question. If Artur is online, he can read it out himself. Artur Avakov, Independent newspaper. Artur Avakov, Independent newspaper. I will read out the question because it was sent out. How exactly are you going to become the Prime Minister of Armenia, given the fact that you have Canadian citizenship and the lack of enough votes for the impeachment of Pashinyan? Is that it? Now the question has continuation. Becoming the leader of Armenia, how are you going to work with Azerbaijan, which had multiple threats to Armenia, and if the latter does not go for any concessions? I think that I have already answered the second question, and I believe that we need to reiterate our commitment to go into real negotiations. In relation to the first question, it should be noted that this movement is more than the change of power. This is civilizational, value-based, substantive movement. And to us, the aspiration of coming to power is not the driving force. Moreover, this is about the overall change of the value system, of public perception, of behavior. And also in this regard, I want to note that to some extent, we're going to do everything to make sure that we are lawful and in respect of the law, but at the same time, we should not forget that having respect for the power of the law, very often the right prevails over law. This is a people's movement, and this people's movement, with all its criteria and standards, will lead everything to its logical end. God says that a human being is not for law, but law is for the human being. Thank you, Reverend Father. The next one is from Christos Konstantinidis from Greece. Christos?
Armenia is at a very strange crossroad. The country is in a difficult situation. The consequences of the defeat in the war of 2020 led to the fail of Artsakh on 2023. Azerbaijan asks for land and water. The government couldn't do anything in every situation and now agreed to give territory to Baku. Tavush region is the first victim. If you've been elected, what will be your moves to prevent another war? And how could you save your country from being devastated by another wealthier country, which has Turkish and Israeli support overall? In addition, Russia appears not to support Yerevan in this battle because the government wants to move to the west. Artur Konstantinidis. Christos Konstantinidis.
Շատ բարի։ Մենք արդեն կարծում եմ տարբեր իմաստներով այս հարցի մասին
Very
խոսեցինք,
well.
թե
I
պետք է
believe
դիտարկման
that we have already spoken on this issue in various senses, even though it has a lot of subtlety, starting from the war in 2020. And it should be noted that the war is not over. This is a very important circumstance for us to realize that the war as is not over yet. It is sustaining, and the longer this government is in power, this war is going to continue. Some are describing this as a crawling war, and we can see from the developments in Tavush as to what this means. And naturally, our desire is to stop the war and to come to a real process of peace rather than to create this imitation of peace, because it should be underscored again that this is a very important circumstance. In our country, starting from 2020, the war has never stopped. The war has been continuing ceaselessly and incessantly, and it is also continuing in the moral sense of the word, also in foreign relations, because we have failures in all directions of our relations, and naturally our plan is to stop the war and to make it something that is non-existent and to arrive at a real peace that is unshakable. And I believe that our stress is quite profound at the level of negotiations, at the level of having a model agenda, at the with the aspects of humanitarian activity. And once again, underscoring this, I want to note that yes, we are coming in to establish peace, to eliminate the existence of this devastating war. Thank you, Reverend Father. And now the floor is open for everyone's questions. And if there is one who would speak out, please raise your hand, push the button on Zoom, and we will take your questions.
Մենք կապի մեջ ենք ընդհանրապես։
Are we? on air.
Հակոբ Ասատրյանն է կապի մեջ, Հակոբ,
Հակոբ
խնդրեմ,
Ասատրյան
եթե
is
լսում եք մեզ
online.
եւ
Հակոբ,
կարող եք ինքներդ
take the
ուղղել
floor.
ձեր հարցը, եթե ոչ,
If you
ես
can hear us and if you can ask your question, do it yourself. If not, I will read it out myself. Hello, Reverend Father. Don't you think that apart from Pashinyan's resignation, you should also present to the public a very serious political platform that will give an opportunity for everyone to understand how you're going to take Armenia from this terrible geopolitical crisis, especially that the movement that you launched because of the limitation and demarcation when you're holding demonstrations in Yerevan and in the Marzes does not stop the government, and they are continuing the process, and it is impossible to prevent it. Have you thought about any preventive mechanisms? Thank you. First of all, we are not engaged in or busy with demonstrations or other activities. The whole movement is for the sake of prevention. We said that this movement emerged in Girans and Voskepar, but the solution lies in Yerevan because it is not going to stop in Girans and Voskepar, but it covers the whole of the Republic of Armenia and the whole of the Armenian people. Whatever we're doing at the moment is really aimed at that prevention. We do not have any purpose. The second thing is that we have already presented very clear agenda and platform at 2 large-scale demonstrations as to what is our future vision of the future of Armenia. And also we have shared the plans and program for the transition period as to how this is going to take place. The first one is to create a reconciliation government, and naturally without justice and without fair grounds, it wouldn't happen. So the first line activities of the reconciliation government would be to deal with the generation of domestic and large-scale reconciliation. Secondly, this transitional reconciliation government should raise foreign policy and foreign relations at a very seriously high level, be it at a regional level, with neighbors, with power centers in all directions. And thirdly, this reconciliation government, within a specific set time frame, will prepare snap elections, ensuring equality for the starting point for all political parties who would aspire to run the elections based on justice and fairness grounds. And this transitional government should be supra-political. It would be a technocratic or government who would not have aspirations to run in the elections, but rather would believe that their mission is over at that stage, organizing the snap elections, so that in no other way they would not leverage any administrative or power resources, and we would have fair, free, and transparent elections. This is all our understanding and program. Jacob, a remark? No. Well, Anna Karapetyan will make the remark. European magazine, Anna Karapetyan. Reverend Father, in response to Tas's question, you said that the relations with Russia are destroyed, and with all our attitude to Pashinyan's government and his administration, it should be noted that these relations were destroyed because of the Caucasian policy led by Russia and the shift in the interests. Don't you think that we cannot be a member of CSTO, Eurasian Economic Union, the members of which are constantly congratulating the president of Azerbaijan, supporting him and congratulating him on the liberation, so to say, of Karabakh? And don't you think that if we remain a member of these organizations, we cannot anticipate facilitate any European technologies, armaments, and security guarantees. As we already mentioned, our relations should be very stable, very reliable, and partnership-driven that are foreseeable, not as chaotic as we can see at the moment. In my speech, I want to reiterate and reassure again that we have many questions to the Russian party, and this is for sure. But at the moment, we have legal and treaty-based relations bilaterally, not unilaterally, and they need to be normalized and regulated. As for our directions, our developments in other directions, our relations should develop without the concept of anti. We cannot be in the mood of anti someone or in conflict conflict mood. And most importantly, the axis of all relations, the core should be the Armenian agenda, the interest of the Republic of Armenia, not conditioned by the situation at the moment, but a comprehensive, well-programmed, stable, and we having the reputation of a reliable partner, not shifting to this or to that side, to the north, to the south, to the east, or to the west, but rather having a very clear direction with the core being set as the Republic of Armenian interest and the Armenian agenda, whatever is going to serve our life. Anna, thank you very much. With your permission, Reverend Father, many up to date are still in the waiting mode, and they refrain from coming to the square, having one apprehension that you refrain to publish the composition of the future or the transitional government. That's understandable. Isn't it possible even to suggest or hint at the names of the people who will come to power? Because many have the concern of joining you blindly, and that is the reason why the movement is not strengthening, because there are a lot of people who are hesitant. So that question is both valid and not. And because when we mention names, when we refer to some people, unfortunately, our reality is such that these people become targets. Generally speaking, we don't even know whether this would be detrimental or favorable to these people and the movement or not. And very often people condition the situation by the individual or the personality of the given individual. Today, our task is our existence and the Republic of Armenia. This is an existential struggle. And if in this larger issue, people think that this or believe that this is an existential struggle, they join in without any other excuses. I'm not speaking about blindly following us, but our steps and the logic of our steps testify to this. So when time comes, according to our plan, we do not rule out the possibility of naming people. The names are clear. We have spoken to the people behind those names. If you are following the movement, you must be aware that we have met with a multitude of expert groups. We have had analytical processes, and different groups and individuals have submitted some conceptual frameworks, and there are names too, and the names are being circulated in the square, and when time comes, we will publish them too, when it is the right time. When you are saying too many people or a lot of people, I do not know what numbers you're thinking about. Of course, there are people who have this kind of inclination, but there are people for whom the core is the Republic of Armenia and our right for existence. Thank you very much. All right, Oresh magazine, Anna was with us, and the next question is Matthias Robian from Dairo, Armenia. I will read the question.
Arrests and numerous human rights violations in Armenia in the last few weeks. What do you expect from the countries that are friends of Armenia and have large Armenian communities in this regard?
Սպասելիքներից ավելի մենք զարմացած ենք,
First of all,
որ
apart from
բարեկամ երկրներ,
expectations,
քաղաքացի
we're surprised that countries that are friendly to us, civilized and countries, human rights activists and organizations directly do not see or do not want to see what is happening in Armenia, starting with political prisoners, infringements of human rights, as well as the developments in the recent days. We can see the violence that is applied by the police forces and cases of torture against a person who is also an MP. Also, the situations when in front of our eyes people are beaten, and even a former deputy minister of agriculture who was there in order to stop the potential clashes between the police and the people. And I do not want to use bad words, but we can see what an ugly situation there is when they walk on stepping on the face of a citizen, and a lot of cases that are simply present in our life, and no proceedings, no criminal cases have been initiated. They assured that there is an internal investigation against one person out of all so many cases, which is just a formality. And we are surprised that especially the huge money that is channeled to the police, what kind of reforms are they being spent on? This is a very legitimate question that we have not received an answer to. What have this money been spent on? What has this money been spent on? If we have been speaking about reforms, and this is what the reforms come back to us, and we will speak about this so that people are not slandered, people are not under police repressions, so that people are able to freely exercise their rights. Also, they limited the movement of the Catholicos. Yes, a very important circumstance. There was an attempt, or they did attempt at blocking the way of the Catholicos to do his ritual service. So institutionally speaking, I'm not speaking about the church, but about the mission to be fulfilled. Because the church is a constitutional institution, but also blocking and limiting the movement and the entry of the Catholicos. It is an absolute violation in terms of both the law and the human values, and also the freedom of conscience. And just a question from me as a citizen. Of course, the people did respond to this, but are there international organizations that really made any reaction to this? I haven't, none that I know of. You can use the chat function to ask questions. I will immediately see them on my screen, and I will forward them or ask the Reverend Father. By the way, Christos Konstantinidis is online, and Narek Galstanyan is raising his hand, and you can do that on the platform too. TAS agency Narek Galstanyan. We cannot hear him. You can hear me now, right? No matter how much the ruling powers propaganda machine is 24/7 trying to show that there is some geopolitical support to your new movement, I don't know, unfortunately or fortunately, there is no such support. It is obvious because we try to draw parallels with 2018. Back then, it was just obvious. By the way, bilaterally, it was just there. Now my question is as follows. In countries like ours, where we have underdeveloped institutions without any external political support, do you think it is possible to really achieve a change of power? If it were, or if it is impossible, I wouldn't be in the square today. We should not be discussing the possibility thereof. We need to discuss the necessity thereof, not whether it is possible or not, but whether it's necessary or not. And it is the necessity that forces us to make sure that this government goes away as soon as possible. It would be very nice if after so many failures due to their high level of understanding and consciousness, they left. But as I already, so that we wouldn't come to the situation. But as I already said, our issue is our existence, but we are enjoying the support of our domestic powers, being led by purely Armenian agenda, trying to solve our domestic issues, because this is more than just the change of power. This is about a value and civilizational change, because we have had quite a decline, quite serious degradation, chaotic situation, hatred, animosity, and we have ended up with so many delineations. And you know that our primary task is about solidarity and reconciliation. It is about justice, it is about truth, it is about the denial of the lies, and about the establishment of the truth. Hence, let us just abstract ourselves from the possibility or impossibility discussion and to pose the question of whether it is necessary or not. And if we find the answer, then the possibility will be found. Thank you. No comment. If there are any more questions, yes, please. Ashot Safarian is trying to join us at the moment. Please show him on the screen. Can you hear me all right? Sputnik Agency, Ashot Safarian. Thank you, Reverend Father. A few hours ago, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs published an announcement where they responded to Ilham Aliyev's infringement and I'm not scared of using this word, to our constitution, saying that the only way to dissipate all doubts that Armenia, as if has territorial demands, the only way to dissipate that is the early signing, or is the signing of the peace agreement as soon as possible, and that the Armenian party is ready to finalize and to sign this agreement within a month. How would you comment on this? Is this scenario a possibility? Within 1 month. First of all, I haven't heard this in a statement yet, literally speaking, and definitely at the moment, the experts, analysts, and politicians will respond to that. But whatever the president of Azerbaijan said was not about negotiations or about achieving something through negotiations. The president of Azerbaijan came up with an imperative dictation, setting a precondition, saying that this will happen, that is to say, there will be an amendment to the constitution, and only after that we will consider the signing of a peace agreement. As far as I know, there is no subject of discussion. There is caution, there is imperative demand there. So against this backdrop, how Can you imagine the signing of a peace agreement in a month? And also, what kind of a peace are we speaking about? At what expense? What is going to be included in this peace agreement? How is it going to happen? We are not able to solve the delimitation and demarcation issue through jointly agreed maps. This is not just a demarcation or delimitation that happened. It is just giving away territories, land, receiving what in return? Nothing. So what was the head of the government saying today? That we yielded 2.5 villages receiving a mitigation or reduction of risks, not elimination of risks, but mitigation of risks. So if we translate this into simpler terms, if back then they were firing 10 shots at us, now it will be 4. So we have ended up in an absurd situation where there is no conversation, there is no dialogue between the two parties. There is an instruction, there is a threat of force, there is imperative demand, there is coercion. I don't know what were the grounds for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to say that it is possible to sign an peace agreement in a month, and what is the content thereof going to be like. It would be very interesting for us to know. And also, we should not forget that many times the Azerbaijani party at the level of the president, and especially at the level of the president, multiply emphasized that all these processes should take place in accordance with their agenda and in accordance with their demands. And up to now, we see that this is how the process has been running. Thank you, Ashot, for a remark. Հակոբ
Ashot Safarian Sputnik գործակալությունից եւ հիմա Հակոբ
Ashot Safarian, it was Ashot Safarian from Sputnik agency. Now Hակոբ Asatarian is trying to talk to us. European magazine editor-in-chief. I just have a question to you, Reverend Father. With some of the representatives of the incumbent government, have you contacted them, or have they contacted you, and have they tried to arrive at some agreements or arrangements with you, or to propose something to you? Thank you. We went directly to ask questions, but not internally, because when the processes were just being launched and the leader of the country and the government visited Voskepar and Kirans, he never established any relations with us. He went to the villagers, and he threatened to these villagers, from whom, and I will not hesitate to say that, he stole his votes from, because he promised one thing, but he did just the opposite. In 2021, neither in the electoral campaign, not in the political program, neither in the political parties program, there is nothing on the processes ongoing at the moment. Just the opposite. It is about whatever they have about Artsakh and the other issues is just the opposite. And as I already mentioned, they have turned the whole agenda upside down. Not that they have just diverted from it, not that they have failed to do something or that they were erroneous in their actions in this or that regard, but they did just the contrary. And during these few days, we have tried from various agencies, both domestic and external, to get some answers. And these answers were not only refrained and kept away to be shared with us, but they didn't even come out to interact, because I believe they didn't have the answers. Simply, I can see that Gaines Sargsyan has raised a hand. There is just a clarification that I would like to make. And the diplomatic missions represented in Armenia and the international organizations. Have you tried to meet with the leaders thereof to explain to them the ideology of the movement? Yes, because I am looking at it from here, the response to the international organizations and the diplomatic missions is not very active. Even more so, it's passive and they're just silently watching. We have the Pan-Armenian group of diplomats. This is an organization. These are former diplomats of various ranks of diverse experience and backgrounds who served in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and in different countries. And starting from last Monday, they're having very active meetings with with various representations and embassies, and these relations are ongoing. They present to them the essence and the logic, the tasks and the demands of the movement so that it is broadly covered. And we are not very surprised to see that the international community may, in some sense, keep silent at the moment, and keeping silent at the moment is conditioned by a number of interests. We have already told them that this is our in-house issue and we need to solve it, just as we have established it for the the external world, that our main task and our main agenda is the interest of the Republic of Armenia. This is our main issue. If in some way they respond to the violations of human rights that are taking place in front of the eyes of the world, we will only be happy to welcome that. There is no other expectation. Hagop, with your permission, let us move forward. Alexei Manvelian, BBC. No, I sent my question, but let me ask it again. Would you would like to regulate the relations with Azerbaijan? How do you want to? How do you imagine that? What is your understanding of it? Thank you. I have spoken about this many times, and today we do not have relations with Azerbaijan as such, neither negotiations nor relations. How are you going to do it? It is understandable. The situation of the day is quite clear. May I finish? Yes, of course. We are for real negotiations, and real negotiations should happen with people in real relations, not after the principle of imitations. I already told you the principle that we're going to follow, that all these relations should be based on a module agenda, that all the issues that are on the table, the issues that are topical at the moment should be raised, and we need to have real aspiration to sign a peace agreement rather than be under coercion, threat of force, and also leveraging some advantages. And also, on the other hand, a very important thing, these negotiations should take place in the presence of guarantors. And the world has created the best tool for that, which is the OSCE group. We need to bring these processes into the logic of negotiation, not into the domain of the threat of force, of imperative demands, of coercion. Thank you, Mr. Mavelian. Do you have a remark, a comment? And here we're speaking about real peace. We are not speaking about a war that is continuing to date, which we have at the moment. What is your attitude to the fact of taking Russian border guards from the border and Zvartnots airport? And as I already mentioned in the first point, I will need need to say the same thing. Armenian-Russian relations are not in their best times, if not at their worst times. We have a multitude of questions to the Russian party, but also we have treaty-based legal relations and relationship and relevant levels, and all these need to take place on a mutual understanding, on positive and in a positive and constructive mood. And relations are not failing or aggravating or getting destroyed unilaterally. They are always reciprocal. So we need to look at it at the level of comprehensibility and also visibility, long-term sustainability, be this the Russian Federation or other partners. And everyone they should cover everyone. This is not just a specific issue that you are addressing at the moment. Our attitude and our approach is to the whole package comprehensively. Mr. Manvelian, let us move forward. And the next one who has raised a hand, by the way, if you have something to add, we still have time. I just wanted to say that, they have already said it. They said that they're going to leave by September. And I just wanted to hear your attitude, but you once again gave some generic answers. I'm just telling you that what we believe in, there are quite a lot of issues, there are details.
There are problems in the relationship, and the questions have to be asked on the highest level, but not with animosity, as I've said, not with the against arguments, but with a positive trend, with a view to regularizing and regulating relationships. I have to repeat that we must focus on the Armenian agenda, the interests of the Republic of Armenia. We move on, Mr. Manvelian, and the next is Gaina Sargsyan, ready to answer. Raise your hand, please. Your Eminence, Gaina Sargsyan, 301 News Channel. Eminence, how likely do you consider the return of the prisoners of war, and what do you think is the toolkit for doing it? In all that relationship, what's very painful and crucial was the return of our prisoners for the military political leadership of Artsakh and all the prisoners of war. For 4 years already we have prisoners, but this government promised in just a matter of a few months to bring everyone back home. The toolkit is negotiations. We have said this earlier, and that's the agenda. One of the key points in this agenda is the humanitarian, because without those agreements, how can people have peace at all? This is of great importance, of huge importance. There are no prisoners on the side of Armenia, no prisoners of war or other detainees, but on the other side, the side of Azerbaijan, they directly hold our boys who are prisoners, who are imprisoned. And if there's mercy, if there's goodwill, a key prerequisite of goodwill is the return of the prisoners without preconditions. Everyone is manipulating this topic. Everyone is trying to capitalize on it, and it's all dependent on the real negotiation table, what we will lay on the negotiation table. And I want to reiterate, this is a key question, this is an essential question. The return of prisoners, all the rest will not happen without genuine negotiations. It just doesn't exist. How do you imagine the return of prisoners and this border delimitation, which is actually not border delimitation, is happening by imposition. there's the imposition now to change the constitution. How do you imagine the return of prisoners? On what basis? In what manner? That's just impossible. So it's about, well, it depends on the will of Azerbaijan, or rather as president. They want, they return, they don't, they don't. So we need real negotiations, real peace talks, and a key point there is the return of our prisoners directly. Thank you, Eminent Father. We are concluding. We have a time limit. If you want to say more, if you wish to add more. No, I just wish to thank, I was going to thank all participants. Unfortunately, due to technical circumstances, our interaction has been a bit limited, but then we hope that we will have the opportunity to speak directly with the various international media and to go into greater detail. Thank you to all of you for your participation. Thank you also to the good team of interpreters and to the media for technical support and for giving us the pavilion. Thank you. This is our first meeting with international news media, and I trust that soon there will be more. We will meet again.